Hello and welcome to AutoToday. My name is Dipayan and you're joining me in Chennai as we review this. Now this is the second generation of BMW's 2 Series Gran Coupe, or as we lovingly call it, the 2GC. Now it's got a whole lot of changes, not just mechanical but cosmetic, and a whole lot of changes that improve the dynamics of this car. So let's not waste any more time and see what is new with this new GC. Now changes start at the front on the 2025 2GC, and that includes this new shape for the kidney grille as well as an illumination around it, which is something that you can't see right now probably, but in the night it looks pretty premium and pretty attractive. Also, the lip spoiler has been given a rework. It looks a lot more cool, and in total I think the front end looks a whole lot more cohesive and a whole lot more pulled together, even though I really like the way the previous generation of the 2GC looked. So this I think works out well for not just prospective customers but people who've been following the 2GC ever since its launch in 2020. But another big change at the front, of course, are the headlamps. Now this is the new projector matrix LED headlamps for the 2GC, which I have to say is a super premium addition to an otherwise entry-level car, and it's one of those little details that really make the 2GC feel that much more special. Now the 2GC is available in India in one single trim. We will tell you the trim as we get to the side because it kind of reveals itself. So let's take a look at the profile of the new 2GC. Now the first thing you're going to notice in profile, of course, is that the silhouette hasn't changed all that much. It still has that nice sloping roofline that kind of settles into a boot, but it does resemble a notch, so you really get the essence of a coupe without really losing out on the rear doors. The aperture for the rear door is a little small, as you can see, especially when you compare it to the front door, but it's not something that really is going to be a killjoy for those who use the rear seats not as much as everybody else. Now, of course, the big upgrade and the single variant is the M Sport package, as you can see by those 18-inch M specific wheels and that M Sport badge on the side. But aside from that, I think the 2GC is minimal, but it is cohesive and it still does look attractive even in the second generation, especially when you look at this Hofmeister kink here, which is something that is special only to coupes, which is why also you get this rear quarter glass on the second row of seats, which kind of adds the depth despite the window not having the same aperture as the front window. It kind of evens out the glass house without taking away from the 2GC's standard coupe silhouette, and I think that is really special, and not just special, I think it's really smart as well. Let's check out the back and see what else comes together to make this design so cohesive but so functional. Now once you turn to the back, you realize that this is where the proportions of the 2GC really start to compact as they come into the rear section, which for a coupe is pretty standard, but BMW have played it smart here again. You're going to see a whole lot of C-shaped elements that really fill out the width and give it that impressiveness from the back. And of course there's this really cool diffuser that runs really high up in the bumper right to the bottom and gives you that sporty sense of the 2GC. Of course there isn't a tailpipe here, although there is one hidden behind one of these shrouds, but it isn't exposed, which also is a tip of the hat to BMW's EVs and their entire range of EVs. But I think the rear end overall, with the new design on the rear LEDs with the arrow shapes, I think it looks really cool. It's a whole step forward, and it's smart use of space and smart design is something that really gets us going here at AutoToday. But that's enough from design. Let's hop on the inside and see what's changed. Now you're joining me behind the wheel of the 2025 BMW 2 Series Gran Coupe, or as we like to call it, the 2GC. Now, the big change, of course, is under the hood, which is a 3-pot and makes 156 horsepower and 230 Nm of torque from a twin charger, and it's paired to a 7-speed dual clutch. Now, on paper, it does feel a little underplayed. I feel like BMW could have done a little more for the 2GC considering the price range that it functions in. But that said, as of right now, they are only focusing on this. That was the ADAS. we'll talk about it in a bit. Now we're talking about the 1.5 litre twin charged 3-pot that now drives the 2GC. Now, from a driver's perspective, it isn't the worst engine out there. I mean, for a 3-pot, it is actually quite refined. The power delivery is nice. It has that inherent gruffness which comes with a 3-pot that kind of lends it a little air of sportiness as well. It isn't the slowest motor. We've managed to keep sustained triple-digit speeds quite comfortably, and I think that's where that turbocharger really comes in. I think BMW could have gotten a little more power out of this car, but having said that, I think they've got enough and it works in all the right functions. Also, there is a boost function thanks to a 12-volt mild hybrid system that does, like most BMW cars, last for exactly 10 seconds and gives you about an 18 horsepower boost over those 10 seconds. It is something that you can feel from the driver's seat, but it isn't something that throws you back in your seat. But again, for a car like the 2GC, I think it's more than enough. Now that said, BMW have put more work into making the GC a car that is better to live with on a day-to-day. And one of the concerns from the previous generation was that that one was just too low. So we have another 19 millimeters of ground clearance, which brings it to a total of 165. But it's not just that. BMW have also reprofiled the front and the rear bumper to give it better approach and departure angles, which I know is something that we rarely talk about on sedans, but it does make a difference to BMW's customers, which is why it's made its way to this new version of the 2GC. So far, we've been driving it through some really sketchy back roads in Chennai, and I haven't found an instant where it's really grazed. Now moving on to the suspension and the steering, both of which have been reworked. The suspension on this new 2GC is a whole lot more pliant, like we've seen in a whole lot of other BMWs in this present generation. BMWs are becoming more and more comfortable, and if I'm allowed to say it, a little more like their biggest competitors. Now, this 7-speed dual clutch automatic gearbox is quite nice. When you're driving it on the day-to-day, you almost would forget that it's there. But when you use the paddle shifters, which are behind the steering wheel, you get a sense of just how nice this gearbox is. It's very responsive. It rarely turns down an upshift or a downshift, and it makes for really, really nice driving. As for the steering, I can't really tell if it is a whole lot sharper than it used to be. I did like the way the previous 2GC drove. In comparison, this one does steer sharp, but I don't think I can say that it's better. It's just as good. But where BMW have really won out is the suspension. It's a whole lot more pliant, and that makes for a very comfortable drive no matter where you are. Finally, since we are doing this review from the inside, I might as well talk about the cabin and how much it's changed. BMW have changed the seats, which are more comfortable and have better support. There is a whole new design for the dashboard. I love this little M stitching on the dashboard that gives it that little bit of flavor and reminds you that the 2GC is inherently a sporty car, designed for individuals who enjoy spending time in the driver's seat. Now, from that perspective, overall, I really do wish the power had been closer to 200 horsepower, which would have justified the 2GC as a driver's car, and it would have made its own distinction away from the other mass market sedans that are already making in this range of power. So it kind of feels a little less special because your BMW makes about the same power as a Hyundai. It's not something that anybody wants to say really, especially when someone is buying a car for badge value. But overall, as a package, I do like it, and I think that the 3-cylinder is worth giving a shot. It's not the worst motor out there. It is underpowered, but it also goes when you want it to. So it's worth driving it to get a sense of what it is before you put your money down on the new 2GC. And finally, the biggest change on the inside, of course, is the addition of ADAS, which means you have lane keep assist, you have driver attention warnings, you have departure assist, as well as blind spot monitoring, all of which I have really come to love. I don't really use lane keep assist, But aside from that, all of the other things really do play their part in the Indian context as well. Now that was our review from an objective perspective of the 2025 2 Series Gran Coupe. Now, there's a whole lot to like. Yes, it looks a whole lot better. The design is a whole lot more cohesive. There's more space on the inside. It is more comfortable, a whole lot more comfortable. It is slightly better to drive. But again, there's that motor. The 3-cylinder doesn't really seem like a great fit for a car that is probably going to cost close to what it cost before, which is under 50 lakh rupees. It doesn't feel like a lot in the context of 2025. I think BMW could have done a little more, maybe worked on powertrains and even pushed up the price a little bit more to bring in better prospective customers. But where it stands, the 2GC, despite being a very attractive car to look at and a very interesting concept in the field of sedans. But I feel like while there was a lot going for this new generation, there were a whole lot of misses as well. And I think a different powertrain with slightly more power, closer to 200 horsepower, would have been ideal for the 2 Series GC. But now it's up to BMW India and how they price it. If they really want this car to make an impact, I think they have to price it right. And they'll probably get a whole lot of buyers who are willing to pay for it just for that badge and just for the way it looks. I would too.